Another riding has flipped to the Liberals nearly 2 weeks after the election.
The federal NDP are attempting to have Prime Minister Mark Carney bypass parliament rules and grant them official party status, even though they don't have the required number of seats.
Reporters Without Borders released its Global Press Freedom Index, and Canada has fallen several places, now ranking 21st. Hello Canada, it's Monday, May 12th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Isaac Lamoureux.
And I'm Noah Jarvis.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. A judicial recount of federal election results has landed the federal Liberals another seat, won by a single vote, nearly 2 weeks after the federal election. The Quebec riding of Terrebonne has reportedly flipped back to the Liberals, with candidate Tatiana Auguste winning by only one vote. This brings the Liberal tally to 170 seats, just two short of the 172 required for a majority government. The riding was originally called for the Liberal candidate Tatiana Auguste. However, a validation process later shifted the result in favor of the Bloc Québécois incumbent candidate Nathalie Sinclair-Desgagnés by just 44 votes. After the recount, Auguste received 23,352 votes, while Sinclair-Desgagnés had 23,351. The validation process, which found the discrepancy originally, is a routine verification of numbers reported on election night. Chief Electoral Officer of Canada, Stéphane Perreault, announced Wednesday that due to the short 44 difference margin of votes, a judicial recount would take place. According to the announcement, a judicial recount is automatically triggered if there is a 0.1% difference between the two top candidates in a riding. The recount was carried out on Thursday by Justice Danielle Turcotte of the Superior Court of Quebec in the riding. Recounts are still taking place in 3 federal ridings, which ended in extremely close toss-ups between the Conservatives and the Liberals. So, Noah, what other ridings are currently undergoing vote verification or judicial recounts, and could we see a Liberal majority government following these?
So yes, there are other ridings that are undergoing judicial recounts. For example, Elections Canada announced that the riding of Milton East, Halton Hills South would be undergoing a judicial recount after the validation process that is currently taking place. Right now, Milton East, Halton Hills South was won by the Liberal candidate, and the Conservative candidate only trailed the Liberal by 29 votes. So it is definitely possible that the Conservatives could take that riding, as we saw in the Terrebonne riding, that the Bloc Québécois, they were up ahead of the Liberals by 43 votes, and the Liberals managed to flip that riding back over to them. There's also a recount that is currently taking place in Terra Nova, the Peninsulas, a riding in Newfoundland and Labrador, where the Liberal candidate just beat out the Conservative candidate by only 12 votes, so even less than in the riding of Milton East, Halton Hills South. And on Friday, another judge ordered a recount for the riding of Windsor Tecumseh Lakeshore, where the Conservatives stunningly beat the NDP and the Liberal candidates by a margin of 77 votes. So the outcome of these recounts definitely are very, very important. It can mean the difference between a strong minority government by the Liberals or a weak majority government by the Liberals, which would change the dynamics in Parliament. If the Liberals still are able to hold on to their strong minority without being able to get over the 172 MP threshold of reaching a majority, then they will have to rely on support from other parties, whether that's just the NDP or the Bloc Québécois or even the Conservatives on certain measures. Whereas if they got up to 172 MPs in Parliament, they would have a majority government and would not have to consult with any other parties in Parliament in order to pass bills and other forms of motions and stuff like that. And who will become the Speaker of the House of Commons also matters a lot. The Green Party leader, Elizabeth May, had offered herself up to become the Speaker of the House, which would take away one vote from the left wing alliance in Parliament. But it would also mean that the Liberals are able to retain all of their MPs, as the Speaker of the House of Commons is not able to vote on matters before the House unless there is a tie. And if in the event that the Liberals are able to get one more riding from these recounts, 171 MPs, and then they manage to appoint a opposition MP to the speakership, whether that they're from the NDP or the Conservatives. I know that two Conservative MPs have already offered themselves up for the speaker position. If they manage to get one of those MPs to be the speaker, they would manage to put themselves in a much stronger position in Parliament. So it remains to be seen whether or not the Liberals will still be held to a minority government or whether they're able to grasp a majority government either through these recounts or by convincing another MP to cross the aisle. But it surely will matter a lot to how this country's governed in the next 4+ years. The NDP interim leader Don Davies is appealing to Liberal Prime Minister Mark Carney to skirt Parliament rules and grant the NDP official party status after the party suffered a devastating loss in the recent election. According to the Canadian press, Davies is engaged in very early discussions with Prime Minister Mark Carney, asking the party for official party status despite rules clearly stating that the party does not qualify. To hold official party status in the House of Commons, a registered party must have elected at least 12 members of parliament. The NDP lost 17 seats and ended up with just 7 MPs, meaning it lost its official status for the first time since 1993. This loss came after Singh admitted that he had not triggered an election while partnered with former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to prevent the Conservatives from making significant gains. Conservatives still posit that quote unquote sell out Singh delayed the election to secure his potentially $2 million pension. Neither Davies nor the Prime Minister's office responded to True North's request for comment. Davies said, quote, I think one of my primary objectives is to make sure that our caucus has the resources we need to discharge our functions in Parliament, but more importantly, to advocate effectively for the 1.2 million Canadians who voted for us. So we are actively working to try to make sure we get those resources for our caucus. Davies argues that on the provincial level, parties have been granted official party status despite failing to meet the threshold. The report states that Davies is worried his party will have to, quote, engage civil society to help with funding as the loss and the lead up to the NDP collapse have devastated the party's coffers. So, Isaac, it makes sense that the NDP or any party for that matter would be lobbying hard to ensure that they have the maximum amount of resources available to them. But what sort of resources and benefits are parties afforded when they have official party status in the House of Commons?
Yeah, Noah. So by not having official party status, the NDP and any other parties in this category would not have access to a lot of party funding for research, specifically a research party office, along with other staff support for the party. So the House of Commons has a members' allowances and services manual. While the document is 343 pages long, there is a budget formula following a general election section showing that opposition party leaders' office budgets for parties with more than 12 members get over $1.1 million with no value for any party beneath that 12-member threshold. They also get House leaders' office budgets, Chief Whips' office budgets, and caucus chairs' office budgets. The manual also lists an information technology budget allocation of $73,280, a translation services budget allocation of $177,880, a national caucus meetings budget allocation of $65,470, and a national caucus research office budget of $630,000. So these items alone add up to just over $2.5 million, and they're smaller items as well, like a smartphone and 2 Apple iPads per member, which could cost up to like 2,500 each. And we already know that the NDP was not flush with cash, remembering the story of Jagmeet Singh having to bus around instead of fly on his campaign. And then aside from funding, official party status gives a party guaranteed time in question period, debates, and statements by members. It also gives the ability to sponsor opposition day motions and participate more fully in parliamentary committees. Canada's press freedom has reached a new low after falling another 7 spots in the 2025 World Press Freedom Index to 21st place globally. Reporters Without Borders released its latest World Press Freedom Index, an annual ranking of countries that evaluates press freedom in countries around the world, taking into account journalists' ability to report freely, accessibility of news, and unrestricted internet access. It also reviews government measures to protect the freedom of the press. Canada fell by 7 places this year compared to 2024 and currently holds a satisfactory rating. Canada currently ranks 2 places behind Trinidad and Tobago. As state control over media has increased, Canada has dropped by 13 places since 2015. Reporters Without Borders wrote, quote, "Media concentration is cause for concern in countries like Canada." The organization said, quote, "This growing concentration restricts editorial diversity, increases the risk of self-censorship, and raises serious concerns about newsrooms' independence from the economic and political interests of their shareholders." The Independent Press Gallery of Canada responded to the ranking by criticizing the Liberal government's, quote, "expanded censorship through Bill C-11, granting the CRTC power over online content, Bill C-18, which disrupted news access by forcing tech platforms to pay government-approved media." So, Noah, are there any other recent measures that have led to more censorship of the press and less press freedom in Canada?
Well, you mentioned a few of those there. I think the big one is Bill C-18, the Online News Act, which forces certain big media platforms, whether it be Google or Meta platforms, to pay media companies for the right to post links on their platform. It's really a sort of backwards measure that has been criticized by a lot of people working in the media space. But that measure resulted in a backlash by Meta, whereby Meta blocked all news content in Canada, meaning that if you post a link to a news story, or you try to go on a news page in Canada, whether that be Juno News, or you try to go even on like the CBC, your access will be blocked. It will show you a error message and basically tell you that, hey, you live in Canada, therefore you cannot access news on Facebook, which is patently insane. And a lot of Canadians are deeply upset with that, and it limits media companies the ability to market their products, market their articles, market their stories. It limits their reach, and ultimately, it does a lot of harm to the media ecosystem and the media companies that the Liberal government says that they're trying to champion and says that they're trying to strengthen and help. And also, the Liberal government has passed Bill C-11, which grants the CRTC power over online content and allows them to basically rejig the algorithms of platforms like YouTube, Netflix, or whatever to push content that the government approves that is quote unquote Canadian enough for the government. The other measures that the Liberal government has put in to restrict press freedom are in regards to subsidies to media. The Liberal government has put out a number of programs to help out legacy media companies with large subsidies, whereby the amount of quote unquote reporters that these legacy media outlets have correlates to the amount of dollars that they receive. And these legacy media companies, they have bloated newsrooms. They have a lot more people than, say, True North has. And they are able to receive millions upon millions of government dollars as a result for having a bloated business model whereby they are not really producing as much content that Canadians want from them, hence why their revenue has been going down over the past decade. Now, at the end of the day, Canada is still a free country, but when we are behind countries like Trinidad and Tobago in world press freedom rankings, I think that should be a little embarrassing for Canadians. I know a lot of Trini people are really great, but no offense to the Trinidadians listening out there, but Canada should be ranking above Trinidad and Tobago on world press freedom metrics and rankings. It is unacceptable, and I believe that the concentration of the media by the Liberal government into a position where they require government subsidies to operate and to be able to function, and they exclude certain media companies that they do not like based on their ideological positions from these subsidies. I think it has a deleterious effect on media freedom And at the end of the day, if Canada continues to go down this path, we're going to see our rankings drop further and further, and we're going to be compared to some very unsavory countries that we don't want to be mentioned in the same sentence as.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.